Thank you. Yes, last. I'm gonna try to make it worth it. I know everybody wants to get home and get some rest. So, and this thing. Okay, good. All right. So I am talking about the independent curator as relationship broker, and it seems like we've started touching on that. So thanks for the excellent segue with the questions and from Verle. Okay, so what and why an independent curator? And most people here will be working with museums, which makes sense given the nature of this meeting, and I wasn't even sure I would be the kind of person to be here, but Natalie very kindly reached out to me and pointed out that I could bring some value. So I began, my curatorial career anyway, began in 2012. I worked as a senior curator at the National Gallery of Jamaica. And Dr. Pope has already talked about my first ever exhibition, which was a natural histories exhibition. So even from that first sort of attempt, I think it went quite well, you could already see what some of my curatorial interests would become or how they would develop. And it was really about partnership and about language and translation. And not necessarily from Spanish to English, though I'm interested in that too, but across fields, connecting people who didn't know they should be connected. So in the case of natural histories, it was connecting the natural history department of the Institute of Jamaica with the National Gallery. Now we were both sister divisions, but we didn't do much together. The divisions didn't connect much, and so I saw this as an opportunity to tie those two together and received a lot of support from both and a lot of excitement around that. So that really got me thinking about the potential there. Let me see if I leave out anything here. Yes. So really thinking about the curator, like I say here, as a node, since we're talking about digital, or as a facilitator of those connections. At the time, there were also a lot of things happening regionally with Art Magazine, that a number of people have mentioned, and also artist-run initiatives like New Local Space, that has already been mentioned. I had the opportunity to work with a number of different places and become familiar. So when I went into the National Gallery, I felt a little hampered because suddenly I couldn't work as freely as I used to, because I was now representing the oldest and largest public institution in the English-speaking Caribbean. And it felt very heavy on my shoulders. So I really loved the work, but I felt like I wasn't in a position to anymore make those connections that I thought were so important in thinking about that ecosystem that Dr. Pope has just talked about so well. So I decided that I was going to go independent because I wanted more flexibility, more freedom. I wanted to facilitate that art ecology in a more hands-on way than that role allowed me. But it obviously came with a lot of risk, right? It was a pretty scary thing to do. I had to give up my apartment, move in with my parents, all these things, because I wasn't sure how I was going to make money doing this. So how did I do it? Well, it was with support, a lot of support, especially from these two ladies up in the left-hand corner, Holly Bino and Nadia Huggins. They had started Art Magazine. At the time, it was both print and digital. Now they're only digital, but still a major hub for sharing information. And through that relationship, I was able to work in Aruba on the Caribbean-linked residency. I was also able to work in Trinidad and Tobago on the new media exhibition. I was able to work on transforming spaces, which does model that sort of art crawl model. Yeah, does have that art crawl model that was talked about in a previous exhibition. And I was also able to collaborate with New Local Space, which was started by this lady here, Deborah Anzinger, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so we did an exhibition in Washington, D.C. with 3 Jamaican artists and a Trinidadian artist, and that went really well. And I kind of felt like, okay, this is a doable thing, this can happen. And I had a pretty hectic couple of months immediately after leaving the gallery. I maintained, though, a very close relationship with the gallery. Verily will tell you that I haven't quite got out of the habit of referring to it in second person plural. Oh, what will we do? How will this affect us? I'm still doing that, and I regularly, I'm a part of panels, work on contracts and that kind of thing. So it's been a really yeah, I've had a lot of sort of luck and privilege, but I've also really gone after those things actively. Now, for our case study. So the case study that I want to talk to you about is an exhibition that I did shortly after that with a very old and prestigious law firm in Jamaica called Myers, Fletcher and Gordon. Now, Myers, Fletcher and Gordon in 2014 was turning 70. Jamaica turned 50 in 2012. So it gives you a sense of the kind of organization that we're talking about here, having that kind of continuity. The firm, though, is very significant in Jamaican art history because of one of their partners, Pat Rousseau, who worked together with three artists, Barrington Watson, Eugene Hyde, and Carl Parbusing, and an art collector, A.D. Scott, a businessman, Vaden McMorris, to found the Contemporary Jamaican Artists Association in 1963. Now, this is actually a very exciting initiative, and through working on this project, I realized that some of the things that I was thinking about doing 50 years later had, in many ways, already been done, and that was really something, because a big focus of the Contemporary Jamaican Artists Association was encouraging the development of Jamaican art, but through partnerships with private sector. So they did have a gallery, and you can see that the founders themselves reflect that partnership. But they had a gallery that was the first to really show museum-level exhibitions, because this predated the National Gallery. So they were small, house galleries and that kind of thing. But these were the first guys to really look at international exhibition standards and to really think through putting together an exhibition. It became a major hub. But the other thing that they did was they encouraged Jamaican corporations to set aside a part of their building budgets and a part of their yearly budgets for the acquisition of Jamaican art. And so they were really pushing the development of corporate collections. As a result, they have a fantastic collection, a really, really impressive one that is one of the most significant collections in the world, really, of Jamaican art. Just to give you a sense of what that looks like, these are the three artists that were in the founding group. So we have Eugene Hyde, Carl Parbusing, and Barrington Watson here, just so you can see what their work looks like. Colin Garland, another real favorite in the Jamaican art scene. They own this work, Mr. and Mrs. Goose. Carl Abrams is another one. Gloria Escoffery, one of my personal favorites. Osmond Watson, David Boxer, who some of you might be familiar with. He's very instrumental in development of the National Gallery of Jamaica. But this is his role as an artist, not as a curator. Now, how did this MFG thing come about? Well, I was friends, well, not really friends. I knew a young lawyer at MFG. She had started there maybe 2 or 3 years before. And she kind of heard about what I did. We must have been at some dinner party or something like that. And she approached me one day, and I said, I work with MFG, we're turning 70, we have this amazing art collection, and I'm thinking it would be cool to celebrate the 70th anniversary with some kind of art thing. Can you help me with that? What do you think we can do? She was also really interested in shifting the perception of the firm because, like I said, it's a 70-year-old firm, right? And it's very prestigious, but it's also seen as very stuffy, right? So they have lots of sort of very wealthy older clients that still serves them well, but the younger attorneys that were coming in couldn't get clients because no young people would think of going to MFG. It's too expensive for us. They won't, we don't want to go and deal with stuffy people like that. So just to give you a visual idea of what was going on with MFG, they were pretty much going from the founding partners there and that kind of look to, this is Daniel, Simone Bowie-Jones, who was the other main liaison on the project, and the managing partner at the time, Barbara Alexander. So you can see that there's a real change happening in major ways with this organization, and they wanted a way to signal that to the public, which was especially significant for them as a law firm, because in Jamaica, law firms do, I don't know if it's illegal or if it's just sort of an ethical agreement that's not documented, but they don't advertise. So they can't buy space in the paper or something like that. They have to get into the paper a different way. So they wanted a way to communicate these new things that were happening. So she came to me and she asked me about this, and I was fairly familiar with the MFG collection. You know, it's any book on Jamaican art history will probably have a couple of pieces from the collection, but I also knew that the collection only went up to about 1990. Like a lot of collecting in Jamaica, it fell off at around that time, along with the economy. So I wasn't super excited, to be honest, at first. And I was also a little bit snobby. I mean, I just started working as a curator. I had left the National Gallery, and I was like, what will my peers think about me if I'm not a marketer, I'm a curator. I don't do this kind of thing. What are you asking me to do? So, but I needed the money, and they were offering money. So I was like, all right, let me go home and think about this. There must be a way to make this work. So I went around to my mentors, people like Verley, Deborah, Holly, these people, and I was kind of like, I have this opportunity, but I don't want to, so many people have worked on what we call the nationalist school. So, art from that period that was really, as Dr. Popea said, about defining Jamaicanness in a very specific way. And there's a lot of work on that and a lot of very able people who do work on that. So I wasn't really interested in going in that direction in my own curatorial work. I wanted to work with contemporary artists, with younger artists especially, who were emerging and I felt like needed support in a different way. So it was for me about figuring out how I could tie my curatorial interests into this, but also MFG wants to attract young people. How are we going to do that showing 30-year-old art? How are we going to bring in young people and not just the same, aging audiences that has been talked about in other exhibitions? So the way that I decided to frame it, I went away, came back with this grand proposal. I did this big PowerPoint because I was going to make a big ask. And they just wanted, a little exhibition, a little something. And I was definitely going to go for something more. So I came up with this key message. I was like, okay, MFG celebrates its strong past and charts an even brighter future. And the interesting thing was that a lot of the people that were at MFG at the time didn't even really know that much about that history with the Contemporary Artists Association and all of that. So I did all this research to dig it up, and I kind of showed it to them, and I was like, this is what you guys used to do. It's great, right? Well, let's do some more of it. Wow. So I suggested to them the inclusion of contemporary artists and a film program. And I said to them, the way that we're going to make it work is we're going to have the contemporary artists respond to works in your collection. So I thought about artists that I'd worked with. I had a fairly wide network from working with the National Gallery and working all over the place, and looked at the works in the collection and thought about who would connect really well. One of the things that I really wanted as well was to get artist stipends, because I really wanted to get that going. I wanted artists to start getting money for exhibiting. And we've already heard a lot about why that's not possible. And I was like, the private sector is the place to get this done. This is what the private sector should be paying for, artist materials. So I came up with this budget and tried to inspire them, because they would need inspiration to spend the money that I was going to ask them for. So showed them all of this, and to my surprise, they agreed. And they gave me a floor of their building to turn into an exhibition space. So this is what ended up happening. I'll just show you the 5 pairings here. So you have DeAndre Davis and Gloria Escoffery. I was thinking about these two as two kind of surrealists. And you can see from my friend from Ghana over there, you got the digital and you have, that more classical. And they came together really nicely. DeAndre was really excited to see Gloria Escoffery's work. And you can see that this is a GIF. This is a still, and that's the projection with DeAndre's alien body in there, right? And people love that. Lots of selfies. Then Eugene Hyde and Leisha Johnson, both are graphic designers kind of working across with fine art and looking at social issues. So this is the Casualty series here from Eugene Hyde. And he was really thinking about Jamaica in that early 80s period and a lot of the social malaise that we were suffering, Leisha was thinking about similar things 30 years later. And so it was really interesting to put those two in conversation because, again, they were working in such similar ways, just in very different times. Then Milton George and Deborah Anzinger. Deborah Anzinger, she did found NLS, but her artistic practice is one that I'm very excited by. And the way that I was thinking about these two is that Milton George is kind of thought of as one of our major kind of abstract artists, and he's like a very man artist, you know what I mean? Like, you know, he was a big womanizer, he had some lady issues that often came up in his paintings. And Deborah worked in a similar way, similar palette, but as a woman was kind of exploring femininity through those things. And I thought it would be great to see those two together. So that's what happened. That's Milton in the middle, and Deborah just built an installation all around him. There were a couple of other paintings of his in there as well, but this is one that people were very excited by and was a great teaching moment because people came in and were like, what is this work? What is happening here? And this was lawyers, this was people from off the street, and you got to have these really great conversations with people who don't normally engage contemporary art, certainly not in a Jamaican context. This is Anika Russell and Seah Parbusing. I'm sorry about the images. One of the things with this kind of project is that a photographer was hired, but from the perspective of the law firm who's paying for the photographer, they just want pictures of people and stuff. So getting installation shots was rough, and I ended up doing a lot of them myself with my iPhone. This is one. So yes, both Anika Russell and Seah Parbusing are thinking very much about the feminine and the intimate. And so I thought putting them in conversation and found out afterwards that Seah Parbusing was actually a major mentor for Anika, which I didn't know. I was familiar with her work and I just thought they would be interesting together, but she was very honored and excited to be put in this pair, so that was another triumph for me. And then Barrington Watson and Philip Thomas. This was kind of an interesting thing because, well, they're both, again, a certain type of artist in this kind of like master artist mold. And so it was interesting to see two different versions of that. Philip is a lot more critical than I think, good old Barry was in his day. But it was interesting to see those two. And Philip, who is a little bit cheeky, loaned me this work called Barrister, which, doesn't speak very well of lawyers. And I was a little bit worried when he brought in the work. I was like, Philip, you're insulting my client. What am I supposed to do? And he was like, no, they'll like it. And they did. They loved it. They all wanted to buy it, but it was already owned by someone. So that didn't happen. We also had an education component. And so a part of what was interesting for me in this project is that I had the opportunity to introduce the lawyers and their clients to how a museum or an exhibition space works, or how we think about exhibitions. They did tours with me. They wanted to know about everything I was doing. They had lots of questions. We got into these really interesting discussions about art. But then I was also wanting to give them the opportunity to get something out of this. And so we came up with the idea of them talking to people about the kind of legal side of art. How do you protect your art? All of these things, which we have collectors in Jamaica who, they have work rolled up in some warm room somewhere, you know what I mean? And they're not thinking about it at all. We've had occasions of theft where the owner didn't even realize that it was stolen for some time after, not even knowing when it was stolen. So it was actually a relevant conversation, and these were things that would come up at the National Gallery. Almost done. These were things that would come up at the National Gallery, and we could never, as Verily said, we were always doing so many things that having the time to address these kinds of things was a problem. So this exhibition actually gave me an opportunity to talk about some of that. Now, these were not the only kinds of panels that we had. We also had panels that were speaking about the artist's work from various art historians or from the artists themselves. We had panels that were talking about the history and development of the collection and why people did it. But just showing you these because I thought it brought in how this was a real partnership and everybody benefited from it. The outcomes, lots and lots of press for MFG, which made them very happy. I didn't even realize I wanted it, but afterwards, people knew people had an idea of what I did, and people would come up to me and ask me questions about it. We also had some really great engagements with new audiences. I mean, Sean Paul showed up at this thing. I didn't invite him. You know what I mean? We had all these musicians, all kinds of people, but it became this kind of huge event. You know, this downtown office building is doing an art exhibition. On the Friday, we had a DJ, and we kind of branded that as the like young night. And then on the Sunday, we had a guitarist come in and he did live music, and then that was kind of for their older clients who could come and have a more relaxed thing. And then on the Saturday, we had seminars where they talked about intellectual property. So some of them were for artists, where they also talked about wills, all these kinds of things that tie in to art certainly in a certain vision, but are rarely talked about within the Jamaican context. And so that was really significant for me as well. And then they were back for more. So this is the thing. They came back just this year and asked me to come up with another proposal, which I was surprised by because I spent almost $2 million on the last exhibition, and I thought, okay, they're never going to speak to me again because, as I said, they just wanted a little something. And it ended up being the flagship event of their 70th anniversary. They didn't bother doing 2 other events that they had planned for the year. So I wasn't sure whether to interpret that as good or bad, but people really liked it, like I said. It lived on for a long time also in social media, and they came back and they were like, okay, we want you to do something else. So I came up with something else, and this time in partnership with the National Gallery. And just to give a brief idea of what this was, I kind of upped the ante on them, right? I was like, okay, I want 300K, which is like $3,000 US. It's not that much money, but it's a lot in the art world at Jamaica for the National Gallery, right? And that's because working at a National Gallery, I know the gallery is often asked to pay for exhibitions, and it's just not feasible. You know what I mean? The National Gallery actually needs support from private sector. So I was able to put that to them. They agreed to it. They also agreed to a commission for an included emerging artist of 100,000, which is like $1,000 US. And they also agreed to increased artist stipends, right? Now, this exhibition was actually supposed to be happening at the end of this year. But right after I developed this proposal, we had a change of government, and therefore, I'm sure it's the same for many of you. Everything changes, the board of the gallery, all of these kinds of things. And so that really slowed down the process. It took a long time for our board to be installed and this kind of thing. By the time that all did happen, and it was approved, I won the Tilting Axis Fellowship. And I was well into my sort of fall plans, which in my planning of the exhibition, I would have been working from February. So we have now sort of put it on hold and hoping to return to it next year, depending on the new calendar that the gallery's team develops. So hopefully we will see this, but what I love about it is that the private sector is willing to give this. You know what I mean? They want to do this. They're super excited about the potential of partnering with the National Gallery. And so I count it as a real success, and I really do hope that we're able to see this one. And this exhibition was, again, going on the trajectories idea, but the inspiration that I had from JCAA, I wanted to think about how at that time, there were all these visions for Jamaica and so much hope. And all we hear about now with millennials is apathy, right? So the exhibition is really about exhibiting those works that showed hope in the past, and then inviting 5 to 7 contemporary artists to develop work that shows hope from this current moment, which is a little difficult in Jamaica, but the artists are keen as well. So hopefully we get a good slot, and I can be coming back showing you images of the completed show. Thank you.
Don't go too far because we might have questions. Thank you so much. That was a really inspiring end session for today, really energized. And again, showing some really positive collaborations. We often work with the corporate sector just from a purely financial sponsorship standpoint, but actually getting back into their space and educating them about how to collect, how to pass it on and grow young collectors will help sustain the community, you know, far beyond one exhibition. So that's great to see and some really great ideas to share. And I would point out, you referenced New Local Space. Again, we talked about Alice Yard yesterday. It doesn't take a lot of space to jump up and do these really exciting initiatives from an artist standpoint, so definitely check them out too. We have time for a couple of questions.
just wanted to say thank you for that. It's really inspiring to see an independent curator working on that. I wanted to ask you specifically about the independent side of things as well. When you're working outside of an institution, how do you develop that knowledge base of contemporary artists who are working, and how do you keep that current so that you know who's out there and are able to make the kind of innovative pairings that you made in the exhibition?
Well, for me, there was another young lady right beside you, actually, who was asking me about this. I think it was very important that I worked at the National Gallery first, and I would certainly encourage anybody who was interested in working as an independent curator, in working as a curator at all, that to do work with an institution first and get some experience of that, because that was very important for me. It gave me a real foundation. To be honest, it also gives you some legitimacy, right? Because that can be hard initially. For me, particularly as a young woman, it was very important for people to know that I had already done that kind of work. But on an ongoing basis, as I said, I think about my curatorial work very much as connecting and very much based on relationships. I don't think that all curators work in this way. I don't think it's necessary for all to work in this way either, right? I have curator friends, O'Neill Lawrence at the National Gallery. When I'm doing a layout, I ask him about it. You know what I mean? Because he's really good with that. If I want to place 200 works in a massive space, Verily can visualize that in her head. You know what I mean? And curate that exhibition. I have to go and draw it on the computer and move it around and, create little stickers and do all kinds of things. So there are different strengths. But for me, it's very much about relationship. So I spend a lot of time on studio visits, on just keeping in touch with artists. I monitor them, because some of them are not in Jamaica. I monitor them online. I have regular Skype discussions. I read about their work, what other people are writing. And really do a lot to kind of generate that. I'm also a writer, so that also connects me with artists in a different way, because I often do interviews or reviews of other exhibitions and all of that, so that allows me to kind of keep a finger on the pulse. But it's daily work, and I think for me, because I really like it, it's not a problem. You know what I mean? I can wake up in the morning and look at artist stuff for the whole day, and I'm fine, But if you don't love it, maybe that would be hard for you. But I think that is really key, to develop those ongoing relationships, because I think that artists also do not like it when you just show up when there's a show. You know what I mean? And then you're asking them to make work for your show based on your idea. That's not going to gain you a lot of friends. But if you have an understanding of that artist's practice over a period of time, then you're in a better position to see connections that are existing between the artists. Like I said, people who should be talking to each other but don't know that yet. And my job is to know that, oh, you should talk to that person because, you guys would get along. And that's what I'm good at. So I think that's how I navigate that for the kind of curatorial work I like to do.
Thank you. Oh, okay. So we've got 3 people. We're going to take 3 questions, and then we'll so you want to go next, and then we'll pass it to you.
Hi, I just wanted to say that when I met you on this trip, I thought you were cool, but now... you
want me to maybe because you don't know me very well. Ask Verily about me.
Well, as most of you know, I work at the Central Bank Money Museum and Art Collection, and the art collection is 50 years old. When I left the National Museum and I went to the Central Bank, I had all these great ideas about getting the collection out there. Unfortunately, my senior managers at that time, things have changed now, thought the best way to get the collection out there was to take high quality photographs of the collection and throw them up on big canvases and put them on the outside walls of the bank.
Yes.
So all the money went in the hands of the printers and the people with the lifts to put it up on the wall, and I was like, people are going to think this is me who did this and I should just quit this job now, and but I stuck it through, and management has changed, and I'm seeing that the new governor is more open to a lot of ideas. He actually told me that he finds the collection is too safe and we need to get out there and collect contemporary art, so I'm really excited.
Yeah.
And you've given me so much hope and so many ideas here that I'd love to talk to you now after more and more and more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole, I just wanted to say that the idea of bridging the gap between the old and the new, because we've been hearing a lot of that gap bridging since we've gotten here, since Sunday. And I think that idea within an institution that's old, that people think, have a perception of, having brought it into that kind of sphere. And then I think it's very innovative the way you have paired these younger artists with these time-honored artists that we know of. And I think, I don't want to call the people old.
No, they're time-honored.
I think what it does, it brings all of us into this experience of not only experiencing art, but experiencing each other.
Yeah.
And seeing how connected we are just by way of our expression. And we're more connected than we think. So thank you very much. This was awesome.
Yeah, it's something that which is why I kept saying, oh, I'm going to speak to you. I'm going to speak to you because in Jamaica, this is a major issue. And I think that Verily has already hinted at some of this. There's a real generational chasm, right? And there's a lot of tension there. And so something that I think about a lot, because I have really benefited from mentors. So I know how important it is to have those relationships. And I actively seek out mentors. I walk up to people and I'm like, can you be my mentor? Like, I will do that. I'll fangirl. So creating space where those meetings can happen with trust on both sides and some openness on both sides is really something that I'm very interested in doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to your response to the first question you got, and it's really the Edna Manley College. It really is such an important meeting ground, and also in terms of the ideas that are being fermented there. I mean, the last 10 years, especially at the college, have really been phenomenal in terms of the output of artists, and also how one has sort of brought about another. How, for instance, the success of Ebony Patterson has opened doors for so many other artists and so on. And I think we both have a working relationship with the college, and which allows us to get a kind of sneak preview of what happens.
It's true.
But also the final year shows, for instance, are really an important recruitment ground. And although it is a first degree college, a lot of students perform above that level. I mean, perform practically at MFA level, So I just wanted to add that to the
Yeah.
list,
No, I mean, I really, really love working with students. That's a big thing for me. So that is true. I'm an external examiner at Edna, so I do get an opportunity to see them fresh out the gate. You know what I mean? And then start up a conversation and keep visiting with them, give them my contact information. I just try to make myself very accessible. So I do have a website you guys can check out, NicoleSmythJohnson.com. That's it.
Was that marketing, curating, marketing? But of course, you say you're seeking mentors, but you're clearly starting to mentor as well, which is, I think, really key to finding and establishing kind of loyalty and trust between that young emerging. We've got one more question, and Patrice has been our superstar volunteer for 2 days, so she gets to ask.
I know, Patrice saved my presentation earlier, so yes, Patrice.
The pressure. How connected are you to Jamaican artists that are outside of the Jamaican sphere?
You mean like diaspora?
Yes.
I think I'm very connected, but you never know what you don't know. More Jamaicans live outside of Jamaica than in. Spaces like Art Magazine have been really important. One of the foci of ARC at first was bringing in the diaspora into a conversation with people that were working in the region. So there are a lot of artists that I got to know through that, but the Jamaica Biennial also started inviting diaspora artists. The year that I was working there, one of the first projects I worked on was the 2012 Biennial. So I also got to know lots of artists through that, and traveling since then. People come out of the woodwork. Just the other day when I won this Tilting Axis thing, they put a lot of press about it. And my website was full of artists from all over, artists from Finland, artists in Baltimore, writing, being like, I'm a Jamaican artist, like, I wanted some connection, like, who do you know, who can I, and so already I've connected maybe 4 or 5 of them to to an exhibition that's going on in New York right now that Daniela Fifi, a Trinidadian curator, it has put on at Columbia. And so a bunch of them got to meet there, and that was really significant for them. So I am very open to those kinds of relationships. I have 5 siblings and 4 live abroad. So, that's a very important relationship for me. And there are some that I'm already very close with, but I'm always wanting to get to know more.